Hello and welcome to the DM's Council, where we have Dungeons and Dragons topics, discussions, and advice for your combat, exploration, and role playing to make your game and your adventures legendary. The Council has 4 segments. First, our Adventurer's Advice, where we answer questions and give helpful assistance to our fellow adventurers. Next, we have the Town Message Board, where plot hooks, encounters, and quests can be found. Third, What's in the Bag of Holding, where we come up with ideas for magic items that you can use in your campaigns. And last, our Imagination Menagerie, where we share ideas for character and creature customization. Episode 1. What is Dungeons & Dragons, and why do you play it? Dungeons & Dragons is a tabletop role-playing game of imagination created in 1974 by Gary Gygax and David Arneson, where you take on the role of an adventurer with others to accomplish goals set forth by your Dungeon Master. The Dungeon Master, or DM, leads the group of players in a communal, interactive storytelling game of chance denoted by dice rolls. Throughout the 45 years since its creation, there have been 5 iterations of the main game, with countless spin-offs and similar games based on the core ideas and concepts laid out by the original. In the 5 rulebook editions, there have been several additions and subtractions to the basic rules and format of the game. The initial launch of the first edition was rather light on the rules, and it left quite of the details up to the DM's discretion beyond the basic skeleton framework of the rules. The second edition was called Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, which was much more rules-heavy and set forth numerous rules to solidify the overall game-playing experience. These were the growing pains of the D&D franchise and were a large turnoff to many people because of the plethora of rules you had to learn in order to play. It was this way until about the year 2000, in which the third edition was published and made more readily available in stores, with a total restructuring of the rules to make them easier to learn. And with each edition after this, the rules have pretty much stayed with the same framework as that set forth in 3rd edition, with a few alterations. In 2008, the 4th edition was published, and was the most combat mechanically focused version yet. Also, they did away with the Prestige class system from 3rd edition, where you were able to customize your skills and traits in order to achieve higher tier classes, and they moved to a Paragon system, where your character was locked into branching paths based on your class. The current edition, 5th, has many parts from older editions. Namely, it took the Paragon class system and renamed it to archetypes. They also simplified the numerous numerical bonuses of the older systems and now simplified it and turned it into a system called Advantage and Disadvantage. I started with the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons edition. When I was really little, probably about, 11 or 12, my parents would take me on one of their many antiquing trips. They would just drive around and hit up every little store that they came across, and this was really torturous for me because their number one rule was look with your eyes, not your hands. So I always had to walk around with my hands in my pockets, and usually I would end up just practicing my whistling. Well, on one trip, there was a small bookstore attached to one of the antique shops. So I thought, hey, you can't really break a book. So I started browsing the shelves and looking for anything interesting. Well, it just so happens I came upon an old used box, and on the front cover of this box, there was a girl sitting on a mound of treasure playing a harp next to a giant dragon. And you got me right there. I have so many questions. Who is this girl? Where did she come from? Where did all that treasure come from? Why is there a huge dragon sitting next to her? All of these questions could be answered for the low price of $7.99. So, of course, I took my allowance and I bought it. It turns out it was the AD&D module called Time of the Dragon. I spent several hours looking over the pictures in the manual and the corresponding maps. The rules were a little beyond my comprehension, so normally I would just make up stories about the pictures that I saw. My next soiree into D&D was probably picking up the Dragonlance books. The first book that I read was called The Legend of Huma. On the front cover it had a knight on dragonback wielding a huge lance. From there on out, I went to every single yard sale, bookstore, and flea market my parents would deign to take me to, and I devoured every single book that I could find. I didn't even really care if I read them out of order. Fast forward to when I was in high school. By then, 3rd edition had come out, and I already had a job at that point, so I was able to actually buy the first 3 books in the 3rd edition series: the Player's Handbook, the Monster Manual, and the DM's Guide. And I read through them and I enjoyed them, but I hadn't really been able to find anyone to play with. That is until I found out there was a sci-fi comic book and anime convention being held in my local town, and they actually were hosting 3rd edition campaigns. So I was able to go there, actually build my very first character, which was a druid, and have any questions I have answered. That about sums up my D&D history for the most part. But what about people who have never played Dungeons & Dragons? Chances are, if you've ever played a role-playing video game or watched a medieval or television show, then many of the elements and tropes can be derived from Dungeons & Dragons. How many pots have you smashed in a Legend of Zelda game? Or how many boar pelts have you farmed in World of Warcraft, hoping to make a new set of armor? Both of these and countless other examples are derived from the exploration and expectation of getting some benefit for your character. But why do you play this game? Is it for a sense of achievement, the power fantasy of doing something fantastical, or interacting with people in a fun and outlandish way? It usually differs from person to person, but I enjoy spending several hours hanging out with my friends on a weekly basis and solving problems with my imagination. Now, with that existential question fresh in our minds, I'd like to move on to our first segment, the Adventurer's Advice. And what better advice to give than how do I start to play D&D? The best and easiest place to start would probably be looking online at wizardsofthecoast.com. Browse the articles and read a couple of them, and see if they interest you. From there, you can download a starter package with the base set of the rules. Next, I would see if there's a local hobby store in your area. Ask if there is someone you can talk to. Normally, there will be at least one person willing to answer any questions you might have. But what if you actually know someone who already plays? Well, ask them if you can sit in on a game session to get a real feel of what to expect. There are even online sites like Roll20 where you can play with people from all around the world, even if you can't meet up with them in person. Once you've decided to play, all you really need are 2 things. First, a set of corresponding dice, probably bought from your hobby store or online, and a character sheet, which is in your downloadable rules starter package. With this helpful advice, you are well on your way to becoming a full-fledged adventurer. Hear ye, hear ye. Time for the town message board. A new bulletin has been posted recently by a rather nervous and shaky man who clutches his heart as he walks away from the message board. The yellowing, crumpled paper he left behind seems to be smeared with iridescent ink blots, and it reads, "For all that is holy, I am in need of deliverance from a wicked curse that coils around my heart and threatens to devour my soul. Please hurry, for I do not have much time left before the serpent strikes." This man suffers from a living snake tattoo curse. It started at his ankle and has progressed up his body, slithering up towards his heart, where it will deliver the fatal bite. The adventurers must find out what is the cause of this. Is it a scorned lover, a sacrificial pact, or something worse? Before our next segment, let me give you a little caveat. For those of you who don't know what a bag of holding is, it is a magic item created early on in the Dungeons & Dragons editions, and it can hold absurdly large or numerous things. When the bag is opened, there is an extra dimensional space inside, allowing it to hold more items than the bag is physically able to. Like, for example, I've stored statues, ladders, dead bodies, just to name a few, in my bag of holding, and it never gains any weight. Although there are limits to what the bag can hold, as long as you're not smuggling a whale in it, you should be okay. Now for our magic item segment, we have What's in the Bag of Holding. Today, we have the Pilferer's Bane's Purse, a wondrous, uncommon magic item. This unassuming small coin purse has been enchanted with both abjuration and divination magic, along with some material components from the owner, in order to protect against thievery. A lock of hair or drop of blood is required, along with a 1-hour ritual where the person must sew the hair into the purse or stain it with the blood. Upon completion, the purse is enchanted with the Alarm and Locate Object spells until activated or dispelled. So the next time the purse is removed from the owner without his or her consent, both spells are triggered. Now, once both of these spells have been triggered, the owner must repeat the ritual in order to enchant the purse once more. Now I know I'm not the only paranoid individual who doesn't want someone taking off with their hard-earned gold. So normally when I play a wizard, I need all the money I can get in order to copy new spells into my spellbook. So I've designed this item for more urban environments where thievery is more common, and you always need to be on high alert. Now granted, there are some ways to get around the effects of this item, but for most mundane rogues and NPCs, this is a big deterrent. For our last segment, we have our character and creature customization, our Imagination Menagerie. For this segment, I wanted a more effective way for animals and pets to be used in battle. Now, I have played with numerous summoned familiars and animal companions throughout the years, and for the longest time, they would always get knocked out pretty early on in the fight because of their weak armor class or their low HP score. Now, I know the game is balanced this way because they don't want people to overrun every single encounter with hordes of animals, but to a conjuration wizard, a druid, or a beastmaster ranger, the creature allies we gain are not potent enough. So I came up with the idea of exotic armor to outfit your animals in. Now you will need to find an accommodating blacksmith who would measure and fit the armor to your respective animal. And you know what? This would make a great side quest or a goal for some players. Now the armor would be equivalent to either leather, chain, or splint. The armor would be attached with straps so not to impede movement or actions. Now that being said, you can't have an owl decked out in full splint mail flying around. So, the DM can decide on the cost and practicalness of the requested armor. Once you obtain the armor, it would give between a +1 to +3 to the AC of the animal it is attached to. It would also take 1 to 3 minutes to don and remove when not in combat. Well, that about wraps it up for our first episode of the DM's Council. I want to thank you all very much for listening. To contact the Council, please send emails with questions and comments to thedmscouncil@gmail.com and visit us on Facebook and Twitter @thedmscouncil. I would love to answer any questions you might have or hear any ideas for the magic item, town message board, or character creature customization segments. Just so you know, there is always an open seat at the Council's table waiting for adventurers. So make all of your adventures legendary.